Hi everyone, I'm Jodi Schwan with Sioux Falls Business, and my guest today is someone who has been in the thick of COVID-19 preparations and now response really from the beginning of the time the pandemic made its way to this country, perhaps even before that. Randy Burry, President and CEO of the Good Samaritan Society, which of course is now part of Sanford Health, is my guest. Randy, thanks so much for taking some time to be with me today.
Well, thank you, Jodi. I appreciate being here.
You and I spoke, it was at the very beginning of our reporting around this whole pandemic, and it was just as the United States was starting to make some very real changes in response to COVID-19. You had actually just been to Washington, D.C., to the White House on a minute call that brought you in there. So you got a sense very early on, I think, of what was maybe ahead of us. How have things materialized since then? Let's speak, first of all, broadly throughout the Good Samaritan organization. With how you've been responding and maybe how it's compared to your expectations back from when you and I initially talked now several weeks ago.
Sure. You know, I have to look at a calendar, but I think that was probably only a month or two ago. And now in terms of this whole COVID-19, it seems like about a year ago. Because of course, at that time, we didn't have any positive employees or positive tested residents. And so, you know, from the very beginning, that's been our focus, you know, is how do we keep residents and our staff safe? So we came back from the White House and really kicked off a flurry of activity of preparation. What will our policies be when we get the first positive test back on an employee? What will be the first things we do with the first positive of a resident? So we put just a flurry of activity around kind of trying to get our house in order. And then there was a little bit of a time where we just waited. It was like, you know, just anticipating that first case. And it's interesting when you say, you know, tell us the journey, because, you know, the first positive case that we got in both a resident and employee, it's a huge event, right? I mean, it's like, oh my gosh, let's go to the book. You know, what are we going to do? And you know, one case is too many, and you don't want any cases. But it has developed over the last few weeks now, where I think there's a confidence that when the call comes in that in a given location we've got a positive case, we've tested the policies now, we've tested the procedures, and we know, you know, it's like we know how to handle this. We've got this, and so I think I would describe it as the flurry of preparation and training and activity, and then the first few cases and the anxiety around that, and now it's it's kind of settling into a cadence of, you know, we prepared for this, and so when it happens, we're ready for it.
Will you give people a sense of just how vast the Good Samaritan organization is, both
Sure.
geography, residents, employees? Because it's a big organization.
Yeah, it's a lot of people. Well, I know I didn't fully appreciate it for many years. You know, the Good Samaritan company is based here in Sioux Falls, the national headquarters. But Good Samaritan actually has 270 facilities across the country in 24 different states. And that makes up about 18,000 employees across that same geographic spread. And then if you roll it all up, so senior living and skilled nursing facilities, assisted living, it's somewhere over 13,000 seniors that we're responsible for. So it's a broad scope. In fact, it was our Washington site, Blaine, Washington, which is just north of Seattle, and it probably won't surprise anybody that, you know, that's where the first positive cases started to be identified, and it kind of went from there. But as a company, I would say our rate is still fairly low when you consider the size and the scope. I mean, I think we're up to 66 total positive residents now across that geography, and of that number, 27 of those are right here in Sioux Falls, over at the Sioux Falls Village, which kind of came up just about a week ago now is when that all started to occur.
How are the residents and the families doing over there? Do you feel like things have settled down, or are you still seeing an upward trend in your cases?
You know, I was over there. I would definitely say it's leveled off. I was over there yesterday, had a parking lot meeting with the administrator of that facility. And I think I cannot say enough about the great work of that staff over there, focusing on those residents and keeping everybody safe, keeping themselves safe. Because last week, you know, we did all of that testing, and the number of cases were coming in, And I think we ended, like I said, about 27 positive residents and about 21 employees over there that tested positive. What you do in that situation to try to prevent the spread and protect residents, the ones that are still not positive, is you cohort. So you move all the positive residents onto one wing. And, that sounds a lot easier than it is when you're talking, there's 160 residents in that building. And you're talking about, these are residents that, their room is their home. That's their home. They personalized it. They've got things on the walls. They put up pictures. And all of a sudden we're doing this, apple cart upset where we're moving everybody around, trying to cohort these residents. That's a lot of work by that staff. It's very disruptive to the residents. And I can't give enough credit to the staff that managed that and has kept everybody safe. And clinically, in almost all cases, the residents are doing well clinically. We're not seeing that real serious outbreak that where there's a lot of mortality involved. We haven't seen that in our facilities. So we feel very, very fortunate about that.
Yeah, I mean, what it would suggest by you moving them around within the facility, to me anyway, is they're not going to the hospital. They're recovering in what is their home.
Exactly. Which, of course, was a huge concern by the hospitals across the country, that, if the first reaction of the nursing homes would just ship everybody to the hospital, we would overwhelm the hospitals. And so we take that responsibility of, in long-term care, it's a little different because, and I spent most of my career in hospitals, where the average length of stay is 4 days. And yes, you have a relationship with that patient, but it's a 4-day relationship, on average. In these long-term care facilities, these relationships between staff and residents, they're years in the making in many cases. These residents have been there a long time. I mean, it truly becomes a case of taking care of family. I mean, the staff views it that way. And so their commitment to keeping those residents safe, keeping families informed. I think some of the things we did early on have paid off. We were one of the earliest companies to adopt the no visitor kind of rule. And that's a tough one to put in place because, to tell family members they can't come into that building and see their loved one, that I wouldn't like it. I don't know anybody that would like that. But in the interest of keeping everybody safe, we did it. And I think those things have paid off. And we've tried real hard to keep people connected. We distributed over 1,000 iPads a few weeks ago, just to try to where there wasn't the ability in some of the residents to use those systems. The staff is helping make connections to families through the use of iPads and those kind of things. So we're doing what we can to keep those family connections in place too.
I really sympathize for you guys, particularly in Sioux Falls, as these cases came out, because I knew how proactive you had been and how many protocols were put in place. And yet, I mean, clearly it's got to just be very hard to stop the spread when it gets into a place. Are there things that you have learned from the Sioux Falls facility, both maybe on the prevention side as well as on the good side, on the proactive side that you've done that are going to pay off here down the road, because we're not done with this yet?
No, I think that's exactly right. And we took a real aggressive approach last weekend. Now we've got the benefit here, being part of Sanford Health, and it makes everything easier if something occurs in Sioux Falls and even outside of Sioux Falls, things like PPE, supplies, supply chain, those things, Sanford Health and the supply chain folks have supported the whole organization of Good Samaritan. And so that's been really a benefit to us. Even last weekend when these positive tests started occurring, we were able to call our lab folks, and within a few hours, they had a tent set up over there and tested like over 200 residents and people and staff within about a 4-hour time window. Well, that's only possible because of the resources we have from being part of Sanford Health. And then the other things too that you kind of underestimate until you get into the middle of a situation like this. Even the depth and the breadth of the clinical expertise. For Good Samaritan to be able to just pick up the phone and have immediate access to clinical expertise like infectious disease physicians, to get questions answered just real quickly. We don't have to go through, layers of bureaucracy in a different organization. We're calling our colleagues. And so that's been a huge benefit as well.
Terrific. You mentioned the families. I certainly feel for the families. We've been there with my family. I mean, we visited
Yep.
my grandmother in a nursing situation twice a day usually.
Sure.
And so to not be able to go in and see your loved one, particularly during a time like this,
Yeah.
that's so hard.
You know,
Go ahead. I
I
think
think,
staff has really stepped up to try to do that too.
yeah, I think the families have been really supportive because I think they've recognized that everything we've done has been in an effort to keep their loved ones safe. And so they know that. We've had some great, some great gestures. Well, if you drive by the village today, you can drive by the village and on Marion Road, great big sign, that some family members made a big red heart. And then they said something like, thanks for loving our brother, mother, grandma, grandpa, and I mean, gestures like that mean a lot to the staff. There have been all kinds of things where one of the residents' grandsons showed up, a little boy in a Superman outfit outside the window. I mean, there's just been many, many gestures like this from family members that they support the staff and they recognize that, it's the staff that carries the load in this whole thing. I mean, I sit in the corporate office, we make decisions like, okay, we're going to test all the residents. Well, it's easy to make that decision. It's very difficult to pull it off. So the staff, have to all the logistics that go into that. When we talk about, well, okay, we've got some positive residents in a facility, we've got to cohort them onto one wing. Again, administratively, a pretty easy decision, pretty easy call, makes a lot of sense. Boy, to implement that, the staff are the ones that have to make that happen. And they've done it, without fail. And so the dedication that we've seen there, it's really impressive.
And I mean, let's not lose sight. You got a lot of staff who were sick too. And so I'm sure, having contingency plans for adjusting based on what those levels look like. How's your team doing? Are you starting to see some people feeling better yet?
Yes. I don't have the number right in front of me, but we've been at this a while. We actually now are having a list of not just positive employees and positive residents, but now we got a new column on there that says recovered, because some people have had this both on the employee ranks and the resident side, and they're recovering from it. And we've been fortunate in that regard. I mean, most of our residents, we are managing them within the facility. And so that's good to see because, the other thing that says is there's so much fear of the unknown in a case like this, but now we're far enough into it where we've proved that you can survive this, right? Even if you're an elderly individual living in a skilled nursing facility, you can survive it. You may not even need to go to the hospital, which most of ours have not. They're not going to the hospital. And so I think that history now breeds confidence as well. And, I was talking to the administrator, Alicia, over at the village yesterday, and she said too, there was even a comfort level after all the testing was completed because we tested every resident and every employee. And she said, at that point, there wasn't a fear of the unknown because at that point, we had the numbers. We knew exactly who was positive and who wasn't. Thankfully, most were negative. But she said, then we knew what we were dealing with and we just could go about the work of cohorting residents and get about our business. And so, that there's been a lot of really good work done within the facilities.
That's good to hear. And obviously there's still some unknown out there. I mean, I think about gradually easing some of these restrictions. I have to think one of the last to go is probably going to be visitors to your facilities.
Yeah.
First things to ratchet down, it's probably going to be one of the last things to come back. I mean, have you even thought that far into the future yet as far as what would the universe need to look like for you to allow visitors back in again?
We always try to be proactive, right? And look down in the future. And so we anticipate, and we're anxious to open it up again. These restrictions we've got in place, nobody wants to have them in place. But we probably will be, long-term care will probably be one of the last settings to kind of begin to open up. Again, just out of that concern that, if we're doing well and we continue to hold the line, we're not going to want to put that at risk. We are not going to want to open up the buildings without, and I think even when we do open up, it'll be just like we're talking about opening up businesses, kind of a soft opening. Mm-hmm. I suspect, and we don't have this all figured out yet, but I suspect we'll do a soft opening where it's probably a limited number of visitors. The visitors that do come need to wear a mask. I mean, we'll do some of those things. That'll be almost like intermediate steps. It won't be just a case where one day the doors are open and, anybody can come on in. I think it'll be a soft opening for us as well.
I would hope maybe if the weather continues to cooperate, you could at least have a little bit of outdoor time, and who knows, maybe people could see each other from a safe distance apart. I guess you might have to get a little creative along the way.
Yeah, we've evaluated that. This is, I talk a lot about the staff. Let's not forget, this is certainly no fun for these residents either, because, they're isolated. I mean, and they're one of the things we did that was good practice was no communal dining. Well, these are folks there again. They're used to, at mealtime, they go out to the dining room and connect with their friends, right? It's a social time. Well, we're not able to do that right now. And so, the residents, this is not easy for residents either. And so we want to get these things opened up as much as we can. And one of the things we've talked about is, can they go outside? And it's like, well, a lot of our facilities have almost like a inner courtyard or a walking path or something where we're fairly comfortable that they probably can do that. We had some people ask about going to across the street to a public park. Well, that's probably not as good an idea if it's, because a lot of the public are kind of stir crazy as well and want to be in the park. So we kind of evaluate everything on its own merit and kind of take things case by case.
That makes sense. Are there any other common questions that you're getting either from residents, families, from the public that you just think would be good to address before I let you go?
I think the message to everybody, to our staff, to the residents, that the message there is we're constantly going to be focused on trying to maintain, a safe environment for staff, for residents. The common questions are mostly about, well, how long is this going to last? Most of the common questions are, I wish I had a better answer to, quite honestly, because it's, but any concerns that come up, I believe we have really good answers to, well, because there's concerns about if you're in a long-term care facility right now, what are you doing to keep my mother safe? And I think we've got great answers to those questions because we've been at this a while now. We've proven that the visitor restrictions, the communal dining and all those things, testing, we're taking temperatures on staff members, we're taking temperatures on residents multiple times a day. Those are the things that, when it comes to what are you doing to keep my loved ones safe, I think we've got good answers to those questions.
All right. Well, I will let you go and get back to work, but thanks again very much for joining me.
Sure.
All the best to you, your team, your residents, and the families. So we will keep in touch going forward. Again, Randy Berry, President and CEO of the Good Samaritan Society, part of Stanford Health. Thanks very much for joining us. If you want to see a replay, you can see that over at www.siouxfalls.business, as well as all your latest COVID-19 news. We will be back with you again tomorrow with another video interview. Thanks for watching.